about the now, and you did hear Mr. Chioke there talking about the new tariffs right now for the almighty Band A. Well, I guess it's all about bands right now, especially the hike with Band A tariffs in Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission approving an increase in the rate paid per kilowatt hour of electricity from about 66 naira to 225 naira for the various distribution companies in the country. Well, joining us now is Mr. Henry Amadigo. He's an energy consultant. Join us from our Abuja studio. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. So we're seeing the NERC saying that the revision of electricity tariffs is set to deliver about 52% cut in monthly subsidy expenses, by the federal government. Also reduce the number of grid collapses that we have in the country. But let's count the costs right now. Definitely, the consumer is strained at this time, the average consumer. Even the manufacturers are complaining at this time. Help us break it down, for you. How are you seeing this hike at this point?
Okay, there are two things about it. There's the context and the need for the reforms, and then there's the impact of the reforms. In the last 8 years, we've had MITO, which have implemented, but for many reasons, political, MITO wasn't implemented properly. So the price of generation and distribution and transmission was less than the cost people were paying for it. The tariffs weren't market reflective. Now, people have a perception about energy goods, which includes petrol, diesel, and power. It's both a public good, but also a market good. You want people to invest in the sector, to make the tariffs price reflective. Your guest that was around before me, the MD of Africa invested something similar, which same thing I would say. The government needed to ensure that we could bring in investors into that sector. There are legacy issues. There are issues around debts. There are issues around poor investments. There are issues around gas supply. There are issues around last mile support infrastructure. But it's a market, and there's a value chain attached to it. I can only put money to an industry where I think I'll get a return on my money. But there's also the fact, as you've said correctly, those that need to be protected, the vulnerable. So for me, I'm impacted as a Band A person. It affects my income. But I also know it's cheaper to have public electricity than run on diesel or generator. Diesel, if you run on diesel now in Nigeria, an average cost of diesel per kilowatt is about 675, 680 naira. Petrol is about 430, 425. So it's still cheaper for the average person. And then there's a joking we've had about Nigeria. Every time you go outside Nigeria, they say, Africa's biggest economy run on generators. It's not sustainable. The issue around climate change as well. The more diesel they use, the more impact it has on the environment. But the key issue is this. Tariffs right now are lower than the cost of production. You have a need for a lot of investment. I heard the MD of EGMI talking yesterday and saying out of the units, only 6 are operational, no gas. Gas has moved from $2.18 to $2.44 now. All this with the diversion of the currency makes the need for the tariff adjustment. And I think what government has done, I sat down in a retreat about 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago on power, where a lot of producers, Gencos were talking about their inability to sustain the investments, the debts owed them. Subsidies on power right now would, if we didn't change the band, would be about 4 trillion annually. We have an economy that is struggling for many reasons. We've had the diversion of the currency. So that's the context of the need for the tariff adjustments. Now, does it mean that it's easy for anybody? Certainly not. We've had a lot of issues this year. We've had issues around the currency, which is getting steadier. We've had issues around adjustments in petrol, which again, subsidy has crept gently back again. So there are wider issues around the consumer. And like you said earlier on, minimum wage is still as low as it is. But those in minimum wage will not be in a Band A category. Right. They shouldn't actually be living there. It shouldn't be earning 30,000. I'll be living in a Band A environment, really. It shouldn't be in that area. There are still issues the NERC has to deal with as well. Right. There's substantial power theft. There's what's around transmission, there are drops and everything. So there's so many issues to unpack.
All right, talk to me about other countries at this time, because right here we have the band plays right now. In other climes or neighboring countries in Africa, why don't we just have one band that serves everybody, and it's, somewhat affordable? Because I don't, in other countries, I don't really hear about Band A, Band B, D and C and all the rest. So what do you think about this?
Well, I'm certain that every country has its own context for operating reforms. Like I said earlier on, power is both a market-driven tool, good, and also a public good. You have to protect the vulnerable in society. And that's the reason why the band categorization was there. And let me give an instance. My mom lives in Ibadan. My mom gets, at best, an hour a week, 1 hour a week at best. That's what Ibadan Disco gives to her. She pays 2,000 a month. That's what they all pay. It's fixed. Every month, they put 2,000 naira for power, but they only get 1 hour a week, or at best, maybe 1.5 hours a week. Now, they don't get power, so they don't pay for what they don't use. They don't have meters. Now, I live in an area where if there's sufficient gas, if there's sufficient supply, I get up to 18 to 19 hours at the best of times. And at the worst of times, it can drop very bad as well. But I spent a huge amount of money on diesel in the last 1 month because it was hot and we had to survive. And for me, it is unbearable to buy diesel at 1,350. Now, a Band C, D person would not have a diesel generator. We'll probably have a pass-my neighbor generator, which will not carry things like ACs, which will not carry things like a freezer and a fridge and others. So whenever you're planning for economic activities, you must think of the vulnerable society. And I think that's what the government has done through NERC, in terms of thinking, okay, if we want to make an adjustment, but we have to protect the very vulnerable. Those who get 2, 3, 4 hours of power a day, live on that. Those who get 11 hours, live on that. So I think right now, we in Band A are paying somewhat a cost-effective tariff. Now, what should have happened, which never happens in Nigeria, is the policy was a multi-year tariff order, which should have been on an annual basis. I remember that when Jonathan was living in 2013-14, there was a need for a review. It didn't happen. General Barry came in. It happened once, I think, or twice. So there's been lack of doing the right thing. And then, like everything, when you not do it, everybody's impacted poorly. I mean, it's not easy on anybody. I understand what man says it's going to affect them. But I also know that for every producer, you can't compare the cost of diesel to the cost of power from public. Okay. It's not the same thing. The price differential is over 300, 400 naira. Yeah.
All right, I'm hoping at some point we all get to be on the same band and have affordable electricity going forward, because I believe even the vulnerable need as much power and should be able to afford it going forward. But that's as much we can take at this time. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Henry Adigun, energy consultant. It was great having your perspective today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much.